December 1944. They said it couldn't be done. The Germans called it suicide. Even Eisenhower thought he was crazy. But Patton looked at the impossible and said, "Watch me." December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge is ripping through the Ardennes forest. Hitler just launched the biggest German offensive of the war. 100,000 American soldiers are surrounded in Bastogne. They're freezing, running out of ammo, running out of food. The Germans have them trapped like fish in a barrel, and every single military expert on the planet agrees on one thing. There's no way to save them in time. The terrain is too rough, the weather is too bad, the distance is too far. It's over. But then there's George Patton, and Patton doesn't care what's impossible. Let me take you back a few days. December 19th, SHAEF headquarters in Verdun. That's Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, basically where all the big decisions get made. Eisenhower calls an emergency meeting. The room is packed with generals. Bradley's there, Devers, Patton. The mood is dark. Everyone's looking at maps spread across the table, and those maps tell a story nobody wants to hear. 3 days ago, Hitler launched Operation Watch on the Rhine. That's the German code name. We call it the Battle of the Bulge. 200,000 German troops, hundreds of tanks. They punched through the weakest part of the American line, right through the Ardennes forest, the same forest they came through in 1940 when they shocked the world and conquered France in 6 weeks. Now they're doing it again, except this time the stakes are even higher. If the Germans break through to Antwerp, they'll cut the Allied army in half. They'll capture the biggest supply port in Europe. They could push the Allies back months, maybe even force a negotiated peace. Hitler's betting everything on this. It's his last chance to change the war. And right in the middle of this chaos is Bastogne, a small Belgian town that nobody cared about a week ago. But Bastogne sits at a crossroads. 7 roads meet there. You can't move armies through the Ardennes without those roads. So whoever controls Bastogne controls the battle. The 101st Airborne is in Bastogne, the Screaming Eagles. These guys parachuted into Normandy on D-Day. They're tough as nails, but they're surrounded, cut off. The Germans have them encircled with 2 panzer divisions, and they're squeezing tighter every hour. Eisenhower looks around the room. His face is grim. He asks the question everyone's thinking. How do we save Bastogne? The room goes quiet, because everyone knows the answer. You can't. Not in time anyway. The Germans will overrun the town in 2 days, maybe 3 if the 101st fights like demons. But relief? Getting an entire army corps through the Ardennes in the middle of winter to break the siege? Impossible. That's when Patton speaks up. He's sitting there with that cocky look he always has, like he knows something nobody else does, and he says something that makes everyone think he's lost his mind. "I can be there in 48 hours. The room erupts. Officers are talking over each other. Someone laughs. They think it's a joke. It has to be a joke, because what Patton just said defies everything they know about warfare. Patton's Third Army is 90 miles south of Bastogne. 90 miles. That doesn't sound like much until you understand what those 90 miles look like. The Ardennes isn't flat farmland. It's dense forest, steep hills, narrow winding roads, and right now it's December. There's ice everywhere, snow, fog so thick you can't see 10 feet. The roads are packed with retreating American units, refugees, destroyed vehicles. It's chaos. To reach Bastogne, Patton would have to turn his entire army 90 degrees. Do you understand how insane that is? Armies don't pivot on a dime. They're not sports cars. They're massive complex machines with hundreds of thousands of moving parts. Tanks, artillery, supply trucks, field hospitals, 3 whole divisions. And Patton wants to turn all of that north and drive through some of the worst terrain in Europe in the middle of the worst winter in decades while under German fire. Military doctrine says it takes at least a week to plan and execute a maneuver like that. At least. You need to coordinate movements, arrange supply lines, brief commanders, plot routes, make sure units don't crash into each other in the dark. One mistake, and you've got a traffic jam 50 miles long with German artillery raining down. But Patton's sitting there saying 48 hours, 2 days. Eisenhower stares at him. Everyone's waiting for the punchline. There isn't one. Patton's serious. Here's what nobody in that room knows. Patton saw this coming. A week earlier, Patton was at his headquarters studying intelligence reports. His staff noticed something weird. The Germans were moving troops, a lot of troops, shifting them toward the Ardennes. Now the Ardennes was supposed to be quiet. It was thinly defended on purpose. Both sides considered it impassable for large-scale operations. The terrain was too difficult, so the Allies put their weakest units there. Green troops, units that needed rest. The logic was simple. Nothing big could happen in the Ardennes. But Patton didn't buy it. He remembered 1940. He remembered how the Germans stunned the world by driving panzer divisions through the Ardennes when everyone said it was impossible. The Germans already did the impossible once. Why not twice? So Patton did something that nobody else thought to do. He told his staff to draw up contingency plans, just in case. Plans for moving the Third Army north. 3 different plans, actually, each one for a different sector of the Ardennes. His officers thought he was being paranoid, but they did it anyway, because when Patton tells you to do something, you don't argue. Now in that room in Verdun, those plans are sitting in Patton's briefcase, already done, already worked out, all the math, all the logistics, all the coordination. While everyone else is scrambling to figure out what to do, Patton's already 10 steps ahead. That's the thing about Patton. People thought he was just this aggressive hothead who loved tanks and fighting. And sure, he was aggressive, but he was also one of the smartest tactical minds in the entire war. He studied history obsessively, read everything, military theory, ancient battles. He could quote Napoleon and Frederick the Great from memory. He understood warfare at a level most officers never reached. And he understood something else, something psychological. He understood that war is as much about will as it is about weapons. The side that believes it can win usually does. The side that thinks it's beaten usually is. Patton knew that if he could pull off the impossible, the effect would be devastating. Not just tactically, but psychologically. It would tell the Germans that no matter what they did, the Allies would find a way. It would tell his own troops that they were unstoppable. So when everyone in that room is telling him he's crazy, Patton doubles down. He doesn't just say he can do it, he promises he'll do it. 3 divisions, 4th Armoured, 26th Infantry, 81st Infantry, 200,000 men, thousands of vehicles, all moving north, and they'll break through to Bastogne in 2 days, or he'll resign. Eisenhower looks at him for a long moment, then he nods. Okay, do it. Patton walks out of that meeting and immediately gets on the phone. His chief of staff picks up. Patton says 2 words. Execute Plan 3. That's it. No long explanation, no complicated orders, just execute Plan 3, because the plan's already done. His staff springs into action. Orders go out over radio, coded messages. Unit commanders receive their instructions, and the Third Army starts to move. Now let me explain what moving an army actually means, because Hollywood makes it look simple. It's not. It's the most complicated logistical challenge you can imagine. You've got columns of vehicles stretching for miles. Each unit needs to move on a specific road at a specific time. If one unit is late, everyone behind them is late. If someone takes a wrong turn, you've got a pile-up. And remember, this is 1944. No GPS, no computers, just maps and radios and a whole lot of hope. Plus, you've got supply chains to worry about. Tanks need fuel, soldiers need food, artillery needs shells, medical units need to know where they're going. Every single piece has to be in the right place at the right time, or the whole thing falls apart. And you're doing all of this in enemy territory. The Germans know you're coming. They're going to try to stop you. They'll blow bridges. Mine roads set up ambushes. Every mile is a fight. The weather makes it worse. The temperature drops below zero. The roads ice over. Vehicles slide off into ditches. Soldiers are getting frostbite. The fog is so thick, drivers can't see the truck in front of them. Units are moving with headlights off, so the Germans can't spot them, which means they're navigating blind in the dark through winding mountain roads with cliffs on one side and forests on the other. Patton's in his jeep driving up and down the columns. He's everywhere, screaming at traffic jams, getting convoys unstuck. At one point, he comes across a bridge that's jammed with vehicles. Engineers are trying to figure out weight limits. Patton jumps out, storms over, points at the bridge and yells, "I don't care if it holds. Get across it, now." The engineers protest. Patton pulls out his pistol, not to threaten them, just to make a point. He walks onto the bridge himself, stands in the middle. "If it holds me, it holds a tank. Move." The column starts moving again. That's Patton. He leads from the front. His troops see him. They see this two-star general in the freezing cold, covered in mud, just like them, and it pushes them. They drive harder, march faster, because if Patton's not giving up, neither are they. But it's not enough. Even with everything going perfectly, they're still racing against time. Every hour that passes, Bastogne gets weaker. The 101st is running out of ammo, running out of medical supplies. The wounded are dying because there's not enough morphine, not enough bandages. The Germans are closing in, tightening the noose, and then the weather gets worse. A blizzard rolls in. Visibility drops to zero. The columns slow to a crawl. Vehicles are skidding off roads. Radio communication breaks down. For a few hours, Patton loses contact with entire divisions. He doesn't know where they are, doesn't know if they're still moving. This is the nightmare scenario. This is what everyone warned him about. Patton doesn't sleep. He's on the radio constantly, barking orders, demanding updates, pushing, always pushing. His staff is exhausted. They're working 20-hour shifts. Maps are spread everywhere. Cigarette smoke fills the room. Coffee cups pile up. Everyone's running on adrenaline and willpower. December 22nd, day 2. The 4th Armoured Division is making progress. They're the tip of the spear, led by General Hugh Gaffey. They're punching through German positions, fighting their way north, but they're still miles from Bastogne, and the Germans know what they're trying to do. They're throwing everything at 4th Armoured, panzers, infantry, artillery. The fighting is brutal, close range, tank against tank. American Shermans versus German Panthers and Tigers. The Shermans are outgunned. A German Tiger can knock out a Sherman from 1,000 yards. A Sherman has to get close, really close, within a few hundred yards, which means American tank crews are driving straight at German guns, knowing they might get blown apart any second, but they do it anyway, because Bastogne is depending on them. Inside Bastogne, things are desperate. The 101st has been surrounded for days. They're down to their last shells, rationing food. The wounded are packed into cellars because there's nowhere else to put them. German artillery pounds the town constantly. Buildings are collapsing. Fires are burning everywhere. On December 22nd, a German officer approaches under a white flag. He's carrying a message, a surrender demand. It's addressed to the American commander. Basically says, "You're surrounded. You have no hope. Surrender now, and you'll be treated well. Resist, and you'll be annihilated." The message gets delivered to General Anthony McAuliffe. He's the acting commander of the 101st. The regimental commander was away when the siege started, so McAuliffe's in charge. He reads the surrender demand, thinks about it for exactly 2 seconds. Then he writes his response. One word. Nuts. That's it. Just nuts. The German officer doesn't understand. He asks for clarification. An American colonel explains it means go to hell. The German officer leaves. The siege continues. Word of McAuliffe's response spreads through the troops. It becomes legend instantly. Morale skyrockets, because that one word tells them everything. We're not giving up. We're not surrendering. We're Americans and we don't quit. But defiance only goes so far. They still need relief. They still need Patton. December 26th, 4 p.m. The 4th Armored Division has been fighting non-stop for 4 days. They're exhausted, down to half strength, but they're close, so close. They can see Bastogne. They're less than a mile away, but there's one last obstacle, a German defensive line, dug in, fortified, with tanks and anti-tank guns. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams is commanding the lead element, 37 Sherman tanks. He radios back to General Gaffey, asks for orders. Gaffey tells him to punch through, whatever it takes. Abrams doesn't hesitate. He orders his tanks forward, full speed. They charge the German line, guns blazing. The Germans open fire. The air fills with tracers, explosions. 2 Shermans brew up, 3, but the rest keep going, smashing through German positions, running over gun emplacements. The infantry follows, fighting room to room, bunker to bunker, and then they're through. The German line breaks. Abrams and his tanks are racing down the road to Bastogne. Nothing's stopping them now. They roar into the town at full speed. American soldiers from the 101st are cheering, climbing on the tanks, slapping the armor. Some of them are crying. They thought they were dead. They thought nobody was coming. But Patton came. He did the impossible. He moved an entire army 90 miles through the Ardennes in the middle of winter in 4 days. Not 2 like he promised, but still 4 days. When everyone said it couldn't be done at all. The siege of Bastogne is broken. The corridor is narrow. The Germans will keep attacking. The fighting will go on for weeks. But the 101st is saved. They're resupplied, reinforced, and the momentum shifts. The Battle of the Bulge will continue into January, but this is the turning point. This is where Hitler's last gamble fails. And it fails because Patton refused to accept impossible. The Nazi commanders planned the Ardennes offensive for months. They studied the terrain. They counted on it being impassable. They counted on the Allies needing weeks to respond. They were so confident they told their troops they'd be in Antwerp by Christmas, drinking captured American supplies, celebrating victory. They didn't account for Patton. They didn't account for American soldiers driving through blizzards without headlights, tank crews charging German guns in outgunned Shermans, paratroopers holding out when surrender was the logical choice, engineers building bridges under fire, commanders who refused to quit even when the situation looked hopeless. The Battle of the Bulge cost both sides everything, over 100,000 casualties combined, entire divisions destroyed, towns erased. But when it was over, the Germans were finished. They burned through their last reserves, their last fuel, their last hope. After the Bulge, they could only retreat. The war in Europe would end 4 months later. Patton's relief of Bastogne became the stuff of legend. Military historians still study it, still try to figure out how he pulled it off. The logistics alone should have been impossible, but Patton understood something that can't be taught in war colleges. He understood that belief creates reality. If you think you can do something, you'll find a way. If you think you can't, you've already lost. The Ardennes wasn't impassable. It just needed someone crazy enough to try, someone willing to bet everything on a plan that should have failed, someone who looked at his troops and said, "We're going to save those men in Bastogne and we're going to do it now." Patton proved them wrong, and in doing so, he changed the course of history. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.